The trap of external validation is something that basically everyone struggles with. It's baked into human psychology to want to conform to a group, find your role within the social context, start adopting a lot of the beliefs of the culture that you grew up in, start adopting a lot of the behaviors so you can kind of fit in. And it's all for survival. Whether you like this or not, this exists within your own mind. So even if you think of yourself as highly nonconformist, I want you to kind of think again. It's actually quite difficult to really, truly be very highly nonconformist. And of course, no one's mind wants to admit that, I'm a conformist, because that doesn't really sound nice. So our minds are biased towards perceiving ourselves in a sort of good light. I'm not the conformist. I'm a great guy. I'm a hero. And it kind of starts to distort actual reality. So breaking out of this whole trap of external validation is pretty difficult because we have to be honest with ourselves about what's going on. We have to start rearranging things in our life. We have to start listening to our own internal guidance rather than drowning it out with the noise of the external world. And all that can be hard when we're so used to lying to ourselves and we're not honest. That can be very hard when our lives are structured in a way that isn't really serving us. And it can be hard when we have no real practice listening to our own internal voice and we're constantly just lost in thought. We're constantly lost in the opinions of others. We're lost in social media. We're lost in the TV, news, media. We're lost in entertainment, lost in gossip. We're lost in a lot of human bullshit for the most part. So this video is kind of going to be nudging you in the direction of kind of getting you off that path if that's something that you desire, getting off of the path of constantly seeking external validation, and then slowly over time allowing that internal voice to really begin to emerge again. And by internal voice, I mean your internal guidance system, your instincts, your intuition, the sensations of your body. Rather than feeling numb to experience, your body actually feels alive and full of sensation and energy. So this video is going to kind of be nudging you on how to do that. And of course, I want to define external validation so that we get a clear idea of what this really is. I think we're going to just need a good definition of it if we want to really have a good concept of what's going on and start moving forward. So it's seeking approval, love, or recognition from others to feel worthy or accepted. And this is very oriented towards survival, as you can probably guess. When we rely on external validation, our self-worth becomes dependent on other people's opinions, creating insecurity and instability. And it kind of gives us this temporary satisfaction. It's like we're kind of actually in a subtle state of fear and we're just acting from it. And that's that sort of temporary satisfaction because it's that like momentary relief of that fear. But of course, it just kind of ends up finding itself creeping back up again. And there's all sorts of ways that we actually look for approval that are very subconscious, like maybe looking for a smile when you're interacting with someone. If they give you the kind of look of disapproval, right, you notice it, but it's not so conscious, it's not so linguistic. How about looking for laughs, right? Just kind of looking for body language and all sorts of cues that actually signal signs of approval. We're doing this quite often in social situations. So I want to talk a little bit about the power of internal validation and your actual self-worth. So within our modern world, we're attaching our self-worth to what we can do and what we have. We're very familiar with doing and having. I can accomplish great things. I can achieve great things. I have a lot of nice things, probably being a very common one. But we don't really know being, which is more popular in Eastern philosophy, self-actualization, the psychology of self-actualization, like Abraham Maslow's work, the second tier of spiral dynamics, and overall higher levels of human consciousness and psychological development. We don't really know being, existing. We don't really know how to just find value in our actual experience of being ourselves. Of course, this doesn't mean that we can't do stuff or have anything. This just means that the core of what determines our value isn't really attached to having or doing. It starts to come more from existing, from simply being who and what you are. A core part of that is just simply living authentically. So instead of always kind of determining what your value is by what other people think, by your achievements, or any kind of external factor, rather than that, it starts to be derived from your own psychology. Internal sense of worth naturally starts to arise as a byproduct of your own psychological development, your own psychological health, your own self-actualization, and your own self-transcendence. So when you just kind of begin to embrace this experience as it actually is, without always needing to kind of change it, manipulate it, add something to it, take away something, strive to be something other than what you are now, the joy of being just naturally starts to arise when you're done distracting yourself. When you're done scrolling on social media, you say, I've had it with scrolling on social media. This isn't doing anything for me. When you're done just kind of, when you're sick of just distracting yourself with pleasure, and you learn to just actually be in the present, this is when things begin to turn for the better, rather than always trying to escape the present, escape what you're feeling, escaping yourself, escaping your life, escaping your very existence, escaping the fact that you're going to die one day, instead of just always being on avoidance, in avoidance and escape mode, learning to kind of settle into reality, learning to settle into presence, learning to settle into this experience. This is how you actually really begin to cultivate an unshakable sense of self-worth that doesn't come and go with anything. Because the second you start attaching your sense of worth or validation to an impermanent phenomenon, the second that thing goes, so does your self-worth. You see, the problem here is that if your self-worth is tied to how much you can achieve, how much you have, what you can do, things like this, at one point you're going to lose your ability to do things. You're going to lose the things you have. These are all things that come and go. Not to mention, it's just psychologically not fulfilling. It's psychologically impossible to really derive meaningful, lasting fulfillment from any of those things. Of course, being able to do great things is awesome. Being able to have great things is also cool. But that doesn't really negate the fact that being able to actually have that meaningful and sort of lasting fulfillment that actually just feels rewarding, that simply doesn't come from anything you can achieve or do. The reason why this is the case is because, like I said, impermanence, it comes and goes. Of course, you can have some pleasure, you can have a momentary experience of pleasure, but really what I'm talking about here when it comes to your worth, your actual value to lasting fulfillment is lasting feelings of satisfaction. And you can't find them in something that comes and goes. The only thing that is sustainable here is you, since you're going to be around for your entire life. The only thing that's an actual sustainable method is learning to create a mind that can continuously derive its own worth and value in itself, creating a being overall, right? Being here as in just the full spectrum of what you are, your mind, your body, your emotions, your consciousness, etc., your instincts. Creating a being that the sense of worth naturally arises from it. You see how much more sustainable that actually is. And this is possible. Of course, we're not ever taught about it in culture, but this is highly possible and is an aspect of self-actualization, self-transcendence, higher levels of consciousness, psychological development, and psychological health. So a core part of that is really just living authentically, beginning to actually embrace who you truly are without needing others' approval. You begin to experience real lasting self-worth, which is quite difficult to do for a lot of people. It actually requires a good amount of personal development. This is something that a lot of people don't want to hear, but this kind of work that I'm really talking about in this video isn't something that you do for a month, a week, 2 months, a year. It's something that you kind of have to have a vision for this kind of stuff, right? You need that vision for the rest of your life, right? It's how do you want your mind to look in 20 years from now? Not in 1 year, right? 1 year is cool, right? I'm not trying to deter you away from that. But 20 years, 10 years, 5 years. This is actually how you make these kinds of changes that I'm actually talking about in this video. Very long-term changes, right? There's no short-term solution for this kind of stuff. We're looking for long-term happiness, long-term satisfaction. The solution is going to be long-term by definition. There's no sort of magic shortcut. There's no amount of money you can get. There's no sex you can get. There's no new relationship you can get. There's no new job you can get. There's no new opportunity that can just arise here and then you capitalize on it and you got it and you won and you're the greatest and there's nothing. It will not work. Right? Not that there's anything wrong with any of that stuff, right? All that stuff is great. It's to be embraced. It's a part of the human experience. But there's just deeper aspects to human consciousness and psychology that have to start manifesting inside of you if you actually want to really experience the kind of lasting satisfaction and just intrinsic sense of value and worth that I'm really talking about in this video. This actually leads to really being at peace with yourself. So real self-worth means not needing constant validation to feel secure and loved. Essentially, the reason why we're looking for so much external validation and happiness and impermanent phenomena is because we're actually scared. We're actually acting out of survival. You see, the problem here is that when we're kind of acting out of fear and survival, we're reinforcing this pattern. That the very mechanism by which we're actually acting is the problem. And in order to solve this problem, we have to raise our consciousness because we can't solve our problems at the same level of consciousness that created them. So, of course, a new solution requires an upgrade in our consciousness. So we have to start shifting focus to our actual internal growth, focusing more so on what we value, not what others simply think, which is, again, this, if you're being honest, this is something you're going to struggle with, right? I really want to urge you to be fully honest here, right? Like full honesty, even if it hurts. This is how you're actually going to get to higher levels of consciousness. It's not through BSing. It's not through telling yourself things that you just want to hear because they make you feel good. It's through deep honesty and a deep commitment to what is true and opening up to life, opening up to being or love, learning to love what's true. So do you even really know what some of your core values are? That might be something you want to look into. So shifting your focus to internal growth also means this ability to set very personal goals for yourself. Like I mentioned, what do you want your mind to look like in 20 years from now? Do you want it to be a loving place with wisdom and intelligence and knowledge of all kinds? Or do you want to have an open heart? When you're relating to people, do you want to feel grounded and compassionate towards them? Do you want to have strong boundaries so people can't push you around very easily? Do you want to be able to detect if people are manipulating you very fast? Do you want to be able to have a good understanding of how to have deep connections with other people? Do you really want to know what's true in life? Do you really want to know what's true in life? See, it's stuff like this, very personal goals that come from your own values, from things that kind of resonate with deeper parts of your being. Again, what do you want your mind to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Right? Kind of just start contemplating that. Are your current patterns leading to that goal? Or are they kind of like falling short of it or taking you in the totally opposite direction? Are your current patterns sufficient for actually achieving that? So another core part is learning to kind of just embrace your uniqueness. Your worth is really in your own essence, the essence of who you are, the energy of who you are, the presence of who you are, your authentic self, what you really are. It's not in conformity. It's not in achievement. It's not in doing stuff. It's not in any of this kind of stuff. It's not in anything that isn't just what you actually are. And there's, again, nothing wrong with doing things, having things. Great. Actually fantastic stuff. It's a part of life. Again, must be embraced. You got to kind of learn how to navigate that stuff. But it's just not going to lead to the higher consciousness that you need to really get that lasting happiness and satisfaction from. And by happiness, I don't really mean like a temporary state of just I'm up, but like this deeper connection to actual existence, this deeper sort of just sense of satisfaction, even regardless of the experience. Maybe something happens one day and you feel sad, and you feel grounded enough to even like cry about it. Maybe someone passes away and you really miss them. And even in the midst of that experience, you find satisfaction in it because you're so grounded in it. You just start to love your experience so much, you don't want to reject it, that that again, you actually find happiness even in the midst of pain, even in the midst of sorrow, even in the midst of grief, even in the midst of loss. There's a good story by Adyashanti. I don't remember what book it was in, but he was talking about how his dog died, and he started crying, and he he just like totally started letting go, right? Like, you're in the middle of grief and you're just like really letting go, allowing it to be there, right? Crying. It's an intense experience. You're attached to your dog and it just, leaves. And in the midst of that experience, he started smiling, and I just understood it completely. Because it's like this experience of grief is so beautiful, actually, that like, why would I reject it? And again, we're not looking at this like, it's not about seeing this experience as beautiful in order to bypass the feelings of grief. It's like just being fully immersed in experience becomes highly fulfilling. So I want to actually just offer you some practical tips on like, how do you start to manifest this in your life? How do you actually just start to like create this in your life? Of course, I talk about meditation all the time on this channel. There's no such thing as really doing what I'm talking about here without meditation. This is like the essence of it. Meditation is just sitting and observing yourself. You're very directly observing all the patterns in your life that lead to a lot of unnecessary suffering. You're processing emotions. You're learning to get grounded in the moment. You're learning to just watch your thoughts. You're learning to just observe the ego. This is all really needed for this sort of actualization and transcendence work. Self-awareness practices, learning to just embody self-compassion. So rather than actually hating yourself continuously, just slowly learning to cultivate self-compassion as your awareness actually deepens. It's like a thing you're going to have to actually practice, which can feel kind of weird to have compassion for like your own pain for a lot of people, but you'll kind of just have to start practicing this, because why would you really not want to just fall in love with yourself? Moving on is just releasing limiting beliefs. I got a previous video on that. And body awareness, learning to live from within the body rather than being so disconnected from it. Your body's a highly intelligent system. The second you start to learn to deeply connect to it and live from within it, there's a big shift that actually starts to happen in your consciousness. So we have to shift our paradigm from the body as like this dumb hunk of meat to intelligent, energetic system. Highly intelligent, energetic system. A lot of us experience our body as like this object. We don't even feel connected to it. It feels numb. We don't even feel our sensations very much. And once you start to actually feel the sensations through like Vipassana meditation and learning to inhabit the body, over time you develop a deeper connection to it, and a lot of parts of you that were once repressed actually start to come online. Not to mention you can actually be more present in it. And there's again there's a shift in awareness, a shift in consciousness that actually happens when you start to inhabit the body. Your body is kind of like the warehouse for all that unconscious stuff that you pushed away, and all that unconscious stuff, you kind of have to go through it and clean it up in order to get to the heaven that I'm talking about here. So the transformation really involves living from authenticity and genuine openness to life. How will that actually transform your relationships, or the work you do in your career, the kind of work you do, your impact on the people around you, your impact on your own well-being, right? How are you actually just going to feel waking up in the morning? What kind of habits would you be doing, right? I really want you to start visualizing, kind of imagining what that version of you is like. That's it for this video. If you're interested in working with me one-to-one, you can apply to do so. Link is in the pinned comment. Take it easy.